This story online, it's gotten pretty popular, and I'm gonna be honest, it's kind of got me hooked. So if you're listening, maybe dim the lights a little bit and get comfortable. Let's unpack what makes this story tick.
What I find really interesting about The Midnight Whisperer is how it plays with those classic haunted house tropes. But then it also adds this layer of psychology on top that really gets under your skin.
Yeah, it's creepy. So, okay, picture this. A small town, Black Hollow. You know the type, quiet, peaceful, friendly neighbors. Definitely not the kind of place where you would expect something strange to happen. And in this town, we meet Clara, a writer who's looking for a peaceful retreat to finish her novel. So she finds this old abandoned house on the edge of town and rents it.
The house itself is like its own character in the story, you know? It's got this history to it. A reclusive artist used to live there and then vanished decades ago. And there are all these whispers about strange things happening there. It's almost as if the house is holding its breath, waiting to reveal its secrets.
And Clara just walks right in. On her first night there, she starts hearing these faint whispers. They're coming from the walls. And honestly, I don't know about you, but just the thought of that freaks me out.
Well, it plays on that fear, right? The fear of the unknown. Just imagine being alone in this old house, everything's creaking, and then you hear something that shouldn't be there. You would start thinking of all the possibilities.
And it's not just any whispers. They start calling her name, Clara. Clara. It's like something is trying to get her attention.
And that's where the psychology of it all really kicks in. When you're isolated and on edge, the power of suggestion becomes so strong. Even if it's just the wind or the house settling, in Clara's mind, those whispers become something more.
Our brains are wired to fill in the blanks, especially when we're scared. And the story quickly escalates. Clara starts seeing shadows moving in her peripheral vision. And there's even a figure at the foot of her bed. But when she turns on the light, it vanishes.
It's a classic horror technique, just a fleeting glimpse, a suggestion of movement rather than showing the whole thing.
Yeah, just enough to make you wonder what you really saw.
Exactly. It keeps you in that state of anxiety, wondering if it was real or just your imagination.
This story really makes you question your own sanity.
It does, and that's what makes it so clever. The author is slowly turning up the heat, building this sense of dread. You can feel that something is wrong, even if you can't quite explain it.
Then the whispers change. They're not just random sounds anymore. They become distinct voices, pleas, warnings.
It's like something is trying to communicate, but it's trapped. You know, this makes me think about pareidolia. It's that thing where we see faces in clouds or hear voices in static. Clara is interpreting these whispers, even though they might be completely meaningless.
So how much of what we think is supernatural is just our brains trying to understand the world?
That's the question at the heart of so much paranormal investigation, isn't it? Real or just our perception? But these whispers, they push Clara to research the history of the house and the artist who vanished.
And that's when she finds something truly creepy. The artist wasn't just painting landscapes. He was painting these really dark, disturbing images.
This is where the line between psychology and the supernatural starts to blur. The artist's work becomes this link to the house's past.
The paintings show these tormented figures over and over again. And the scariest part, a recurring shadowy entity, the Midnight's Whisperer.
And now that figure is taking on a life of its own.
Right, it's not just in the paintings. It's as if it's haunting the house and is now a part of Clara's reality.
This is when things take a really interesting turn. Clara is exploring the house, and she finds a painting hidden away in the attic. And guess what?
Don't tell me, it's a portrait of her.
It is. This changes everything. It's not random spooky happenings anymore. Clara is being targeted.
This is like something out of a nightmare. In the painting, she looks terrified. And behind her, that shadowy figure of the Whisperer.
It's as if the artist knew, like he was predicting her fate.
Exactly.
So was it a premonition, or is there something darker happening, something using the house and its history to manipulate Clara?
It's like the story is challenging us, asking what we believe.
Definitely.
And after she finds that portrait, Clara is filled with fear and paranoia. It's like the walls are closing in on her.
Literally and figuratively.
She starts to believe that the Whisperer isn't something separate, but it's inside her mind, feeding on her fear.
The story blurs what's real and what's imagined. It makes you think that the scariest monsters might be the ones we create ourselves.
And then there's her journal entry. She writes over and over again, "It's not real. It's not real. It's not real."
The repetition, the desperation, you could feel her torment.
She's trying to hold on to her sanity, but the fear is winning. And then she vanishes without a trace.
Gone, just like the artist before her. The only thing left is that creepy painting hanging in the local museum.
It's like the house claimed another victim.
And its history just got a little darker. Welcome back. So as we keep going with The Midnight Whisperer, I think we should really think about how the story messes with our idea of what's real.
Oh, totally. Right from the beginning, the story throws us into this world where things aren't quite what they seem. We have this small town that feels almost too perfect, And then there's this dark and mysterious house on the edge of it. It's like the author is setting up this contrast right away.
And then we have Clara. She's looking for some peace and quiet, maybe some inspiration for her writing. She's a rational person, but she's also an artist, so she's open to imagination. When these strange things start happening, the line between reality and fantasy gets blurry.
And the author really makes us feel uneasy by using those classic horror techniques we talked about before. The whispers, the shadows, the glimpses of something we can't quite see. But it's not just about cheap scares, is it?
Not at all. It's about how those things play on our own fears, our fear of the unknown.
Exactly.
Think about it. We're programmed to be suspicious of anything strange, especially at night. It's like a survival instinct. So when something feels off, we assume it's dangerous. The author is using that primal fear, that vulnerability we feel, especially when Clara's alone in that house.
It's like the house itself is a character. It's like a predator slowly closing in on her. And those whispers, they're a constant reminder that she's not alone. Something else is there, even if she can't see it.
You know, one of the things that really gets me about this story is how it uses sound to create this sense of dread. We don't always see the threat, but we hear it. The whispers are like this constant background noise, a nagging voice that slowly drives Clara crazy.
And as they evolve, they become more than just sounds. They become voices, messages, warnings. It's like something is trying to communicate, but in this really distorted way.
That distorted way of communicating is really interesting. It's like you're trying to solve a puzzle, but you're missing half the pieces. You're constantly trying to figure out what's happening, but the story doesn't give you all the answers. And that makes you feel uneasy, and that feeling just grows and grows.
And then there's the artist. Even though he's gone, his presence is everywhere. His paintings with their dark images and that recurring figure of the Midnight Whisperer. It's like he was connected to something evil, something that he couldn't control.
It's like he was obsessed with this figure, with this idea of the Midnight Whisperer. And that obsession is in the house. Think about the power of art. It can make you feel things, remember things, even change how you see the world. In this story, it's like his art has become a channel for something darker, something that's now focused on Clara.
It's like he opened a door that he couldn't close, and now Clara is trapped in the middle of it all.
And that hidden portrait of Clara in the attic, that changes everything. It's not just random scary events anymore. It's personal. She's the target.
It's like the whisperer or whatever's behind it is saying, I see you, Clara. I know who you are.
And that's when things really start to fall apart for her. You know, she went into that house looking for isolation. But the story flips that around. Isolation becomes her prison. It's a place where her fears run wild, where she can't tell what's real anymore.
Right, and those whispers, those voices, they're always with her. It's like they're inside her head, driving her crazy.
That descent into madness is a key part of psychological horror. We're right there with Clara, feeling her paranoia, her confusion. It's terrifying because it makes us question our own sanity.
It's like when you wake up from a nightmare, and for a second you don't know if it was real or not. That feeling of being confused, that feeling of dread. That's what the author does so well.
And the story ends by asking us, did Clara give in for the whisper? Did she just run away? Or is there another explanation? We have to decide for ourselves what we believe.
That lack of a clear answer is what makes the story so good. It sticks with you, making you question what you believe, what you would do if you were Clara.
This reminds me of something called the uncanny valley. It's that uneasy feeling we get when something is almost human but not quite. The story plays with that, blowing the lines between reality and fantasy, sanity and madness. We never really know what to believe, and that's what makes it so unsettling.
And now that we've explored the psychology of the Midnight Whisperer, let's move on to something else. In part 3, we'll talk about the impact of this story, what it says about our fascination with the unexplained, and how it challenges us to face our fears.
We'll also talk about what it means to seek knowledge when things are uncertain, and how stories like The Midnight Whisperer can be a warning, reminding us that sometimes the answers we're looking for might be more terrifying than the questions themselves.
Okay, so welcome back to our final part of this deep dive into The Midnight Whisperer. We've talked about the plot and all the psychological stuff that makes it work. But now I think we should talk about why we love stories like this.
Yeah, why are we so drawn to the unexplained, to the supernatural? What is it about these things that fascinates us and scares us at the same time?
I mean, let's face it, we all love a good ghost story or a creepy urban legend. It's like something inside us wants to believe, wants to feel that chill down our spine.
There's a definite thrill in exploring the unknown. It makes us wonder about what's out there, beyond our everyday lives. I think stories like The Midnight Whisperer also hold up a mirror to us. They show us our own fears and anxieties.
That's true. We've talked about Clara's isolation, her paranoia, her descent into madness. But those are things we can all connect with in some way.
Exactly. Everyone feels isolated sometimes. Everyone has moments where they question their own sanity, We're all afraid of the dark in one way or another. Stories like this let us face those fears in a safe way.
It's like a controlled dose of fear, right? A way to experience the dark side of humanity without actually being in danger.
And there's something comforting about admitting those fears. It's like saying, hey, this scares me, and it's okay to feel that way.
Yeah, like we're not alone.
Maybe by facing our fears in stories, we can be a little braver in real life.
That's a good point. But The Midnight Whisperer also has a warning in it, doesn't it? It's not just entertainment. It's a story that makes us think about what happens when we push too far, when we try to find out things we shouldn't.
Right, Clara was just looking for some peace and quiet. But her curiosity, her need to know the truth about the house, led her down a dangerous path.
Curiosity killed the cat, as they say.
And in this story, curiosity might have destroyed Clara's mind, maybe even her life. It shows us that searching for answers can be dangerous.
So what are we supposed to do? Ignore our curiosity? Pretend that the unexplained doesn't exist?
I don't think so. It's about approaching the unknown carefully, knowing that there might be risks involved.
Like maybe don't rent that spooky old house with a creepy past.
That's a good rule of thumb. But on a more serious note, I think it's about accepting that some questions don't have answers, and some mysteries are better left alone.
Sometimes the journey is more important than the destination.
And sometimes the answers might be scarier than the questions.
So as we finish up our deep dive into The Midnight Whisperer, what are your final thoughts?
Be curious, explore the world, ask questions, but remember that some things will always be a mystery.
And maybe those unsolved mysteries make life a little more interesting.
Exactly.
Thanks for joining us on this journey into The Midnight Whisperer. We hope you enjoyed exploring this creepy story with us.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and hey, maybe leave a nightlight on, just in case.
Sweet dreams, everyone.